What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Combat Corporation, your source for combat sports. I'm your host, Al, the Postmaster Marro. Today is another installment of the Combat Chat, which is my podcast thing, and I don't really keep up with it that much, but the only reason why I'm making it a podcast, because it might go a little while, is this is a Q&A, actually. So what I did is we reached like a little over 600 subscribers, and I haven't really done anything since like the 200 subscriber mark to like celebrate a subscriber mark, and we're actually approaching 1,000 pretty quick because it's crazy. I'm getting like 20 subscribers every day or more, which is really cool. It's a lot faster than I thought it would ever go. But just an update, a couple new videos coming out soon. Just because of the virus thing going on, there's a lot of craziness going on in my job. I'm really busy a lot. But basically, today's a question and answer. A lot of people send in a lot of questions through the YouTube page, Facebook, Instagram, through private messaging, more than they did on the post I made. But this is to celebrate 625 subscribers, I think is what we're at now. So I have a list here on my phone that I had. I wrote all the questions down, and a couple other generalized one that people asked me a lot over the last couple years or so. I'm going to go in order from what I have here. So let's start with question number one. I'm not going to name the names or something, maybe one day. But question number one, why did you start your YouTube channel? Basically, a couple videos ago, I actually openly talked about my depression, and I talked about a couple other things along with that. And that kind of inspired me to do something because I was in college as my senior year, and I just felt like I wasn't doing anything, especially after and during my wrestling season. My parents were going through a divorce, and a couple other things were going on. And although the divorce itself didn't really weigh on my mind, the stress that came along with that on the family started to kind of weigh on everyone else. And basically, I wanted a way to get away from it. So I saw Fit to Box, I saw CS Squared Boxing, and That Boxing Dude, and a couple other guys reviewing stuff on YouTube, and I love those guys. I love watching those guys, and I just figured maybe, I don't know, of course, I'm sure they have competed, I'm sure they have coached and stuff, but I just have been doing it for so long because I was 12, so I figured I could do a review on a pair of gloves from someone that uses them, not just from a, train to stay in shape, from like a train to fight perspective, because I've been doing this since I was 12 years old. It's almost my 11-year anniversary of starting the sport of boxing pretty soon here, although they might be in it longer than I am, but but I figured I was 21 years old, and I always said I wanted to do a YouTube thing years ago. I tried gaming once, and that, oh boy, was that bad. That was just something I wish I never did. That was something that came and went in a couple of weeks because my friends and stuff were making fun of me. But with this, people are supporting it. And at first, I thought it was kind of like, oh man, this isn't going to go good. Then I just got told by a couple of people, you just got to be consistent. And nowadays, it's cool because CS Squared Boxing, That Boxing Guy, and Fit to Box, the guys that I looked at to kind of like get my inspiration from, if you will, for this channel, actually keep me in a small circle on Instagram. We always tag each other and stuff. So it's really, really cool to get recognized by it. It was also cool because I started it. I have a lot of boxing gloves, and I never really got to showcase them. And anytime some people would just come in and be like, why do you have so many gloves? I had no answer. I just like collecting them. Some people like collecting Michael Jordan shoes. I like collecting boxing gloves. It's just what I do. So, yeah, that's why I really started the channel. I'm looking at all my gloves now, actually. I keep looking away. I should look directly at the camera, right? But, so what I did is I wanted to do it right, and I wound up borrowing a camera from my professor that I taught boxing to for a while. He had this really nice Canon camera. It was more or less for pictures. That's why the video quality back then was weird. I gave it back to him after college was over. I took a Best Buy credit card out, and I was a bouncer at a bar. That's what I used for my income. And I bought this camera. It was a Canon N50 for like $600, and I just kind of went with it. I said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. So that's what it was. I bought a couple of these lights, which are blinding me right now, as they always do. That's why I just looked directly into it. I did it again. Oh my God. And I just looked up a bunch of things about videography, and I just really wanted to make it work. I'm still pretty bad with camera angles, and I still need to take a couple classes, I'm sure, but I'll get it down. That's a long-winded explanation as to why I started the channel, but hopefully that works. So, when did you start collecting gloves? So, I was 12 years old when I started boxing. It was almost 11 years ago now. Actually, in middle of April will be 11 years when I first walked into a boxing gym. And I had a couple like spare bag mitts. I had a couple of these old things from when I was a kid. They were like the inflatable boxing gloves, and I didn't really ever collect anything until I was about 14 or 15, and my aunt gave me a pair of Ringside Apex, the gold and black bag gloves for Christmas, because I was using the standard Everlast, whatever it was that you get, the Elite Pro style training gloves. Up until then, and then finally I tried those out. I'm like, oh man, I wonder if they make those in a sparring version, and they did. So I got the red ones, the red and black ones, and then I got the green and black, then I got the white and blue, and now I still don't have all the colors of those, which bums me out. I will eventually. And then it just turned into, I played music at a somewhat professional level at a young age, and I would get paid for gigs and stuff. And basically what I'd do is I'd put all that money to a pair of boxing gloves, and that's what I did. So it was really cool. I started collecting gloves, and I think I started collecting primarily ringside stuff was my favorite. Then it moved to my first professional pair of gloves I ever owned was a pair of Cleto Reyes training gloves that I've had for like 4.5, 5 years. Then I had a pair of Winnings, and then Grants, and then I just started collecting more and more, got into Hayabusas, Venoms, whatever it might be. And I just got a fascination over it because each glove is so much different from the other. And if they aren't different in one way, they're different in another. Even if they're made precisely like the other ones, or even it could be the same exact glove with a different logo on it. Maybe pressing that logo smushed the padding in a different way that makes it a puncher's glove. You never know. It's something that I always think about. So that's why I started collecting gloves. It was just something that I like to do. A lot of my friends would come over and be like, why do you have so many? It's like, why not? Maybe back in the day we used to have backyard boxing matches. Maybe it's because we can have enough. So what we would do is we take the red and black Apex gloves, and then we take the red and then the blue and white ones. You got the red corner, blue corner, and box, and that's what it was. You put a tarp down in the middle of the backyard, and you were supposed to stay in the tarp, but no one ever did. But that's just basically how it worked. It was a really fun time. So hopefully I answered that question. Favorite glove? Oh my god. Okay. I have to do like a top 5 in that case. I can't really decide yet if I like them as my number 1, but Top Boxer has this alien glove, which is like their puncher's glove, and I got a custom pair of SpongeBob ones, and the review for that will be coming out soon. I really like those as a puncher's glove, but right now, still the king of all gloves I ever own are the Cleto Reyes training gloves. I'm a puncher. I love those puncher's gloves. So I like those. I'd have to say number 2 is either the Top Boxer Win 1, my Goku gloves. I love those. I'd say Top Boxer Win 1 is my second favorite. My third favorite, I'd have to say the Hayabusa T3 is up there. I love the T3 model. That might be tied for number 1, honestly. I like the T3 model a lot. I like those gloves. Then I'd have to say the Ringside Omegas are my number 4, and then my number 5 right now. I don't know. Maybe the Adidas 300s, the Hybrid 300s are really good. I like the Apex gloves. I like a lot of gloves. I guess I could say, honestly, right now, the Venom Lomas I like a lot, but I can't really name it. But if I just had to say, like, a flat-out favorite, like, I know I can always go back to it and be happy, definitely the Cleto Reyes training gloves. Another pair of gloves I'm going to review soon, they're starting to become my favorite mitt gloves I've ever used. They're the Phantom El Kukui gloves. I love those by Phantom Boxing, not Phantom Athletics, Phantom Boxing. I like Everlast Elite gloves. Those are really good. There are a lot of gloves out there, but definitely if I had to say, if someone said you can only choose one glove to live with for the rest of your life, the Cleto Reyes training glove for sure. As far as MMA gloves go, because that's been asked a couple times, they all were kind of meh to me because my hands always were too big. Now I got this Fairtex striking glove that they made specifically for Alistair Overeem, and I figured, man, if it can fit his hands, it'll fit mine, and they do. I like those, so I like those a lot. I forget what model they are, but the Fairtex new striking glove. I love those. Which ties into the next question, which is favorite brand. Top Boxer right now is my favorite brand. For a long time, Cleto Reyes was, but the thing is, I really only own their gloves and their cup. I don't own like headgears and stuff. Hayabusa, I own multiple things of. I like them. Top Boxer, I own multiple things of. I own a heavy bag, I own headgear, I own cups, I own whatever it might be. By Top Boxer, I like a lot. But if I had to say brand that I know I can trust forever, although Top Boxer is up there, they are a little bit more expensive. Ringside Boxing will always be my true heart-to-heart number one favorite brand out there. I think if anyone ever needs a pair of anything, you go look for Ringside Boxing. I love Ringside Boxing. Then it says, I forgot to say, your least favorite glove or least favorite brand. Least favorite glove that I've ever tried. Probably the Title Boxing, like the Fighting Fury gloves. I think, people that try and rip off winning is one thing, but I think those gloves were just bad. I just did not enjoy using those whatsoever. I thought Title Boxing's probably, I wouldn't say they're my least favorite brand in that I don't like anything they make. They definitely have a lot of good stuff, but they annoy me the most because Title Boxing, although they have really good stuff, they have millions and millions of new releases, and everything's the same exact damn thing, just rebranded, a different color and a different shape, and it's just so annoying because they'll have like the Fighting Fury gloves, and then they'll have the Muhammad Ali, like the old-fashioned whatever. They're like this crimson red glove, and they look exactly the same. That's probably what they are. And here's the best part. There's a royal blue color that says the Title Royal series, which is the same thing. Then what is it? Now they have the Title Matrix, which 2 years ago was the Title Hexacomb. So that's what I mean. I get frustrated with stuff like that. So I guess if I had to say a least favorite brand, although I don't really have a least favorite brand, I like everything. Every company makes something good is what I would tell someone. Even the cheap stuff that you don't think would be very good, every company makes something good. But yeah, I would definitely say that. Title Boxing and the Fighting Fury training gloves, I just meh. Are you a professional fighter? No, the only type of professional things I've ever participated in was as a spectator. I've never competed in a professional bout, and I've never coached in a professional bout. I have trained with professional fighters, but I have never competed in a professional bout. Which would go into my record, which is the next question. So, basically, I started in boxing. I competed my first amateur boxing match when I was at the tail end of 12 or the very beginning of 13. It might have been September when I was 13 years old, because I was born in August, so I think I may have just turned. It was very difficult to find matches for kids that were like 12, 13 years old that weighed anywhere from like 170 to 95 pounds, depending on the fluctuation of my weight, but most of the time I was about 170, 175. So finding light heavyweight kids at 12 was hard. So what we would do is I would try and get down to 165 to box at middleweight and that was always difficult too. So we would do exhibitions. Now, they don't do this anymore in USA Boxing. They do developmental bouts, but they don't. You still have to be within 16 months of that person's age. But basically, with me, I had to do a lot of those exhibitions. So I would box kids that were 16, 17, sometimes 18 years old. And it was hard. I did very well because I was better and I was bigger, I was stronger. I was sparring with all the good guys in our gym. I was sparring with a couple of the pros in our gym because my coach thought I was older because when I was 12, I was starting to develop the beard. I was starting to get the mustache and, I looked older. And I was sparring with all the really good guys, and a lot of my guys on my team were Silver Glove champions, Golden Glove champions, and we were a solid squad at one point, And basically, I think my amateur record, I never really kept track of it. I know I have over 40 bouts, and I've only lost 5 of them. I think last time I checked, it was like 37 wins, 5 losses. I could be wrong because a lot of those aren't really counted anymore because of those exhibitions. But as far as like accolades in amateur boxing, I am a 3-time Silver Gloves champion of the Northeast. I am a 3-time Silver Gloves champion of the Region 1, rather, of Silver Gloves, and 3-time Silver Gloves champion of New York State. And I won it wasn't the Empire Games. They were gone before I competed, but we did some type of spin-off of the Empire Games or something. So there was that. I got to do this real. Yeah, I have to reset the camera every now and again because it cuts off at like 15 minutes, and we were approaching the 15-minute mark. But, so where was I? So I won the Silver Gloves 3 times. I did a Junior Olympic thing in Lake Placid, actually, I'm from Utica, which is like in the middle of New York State, in between Albany and Syracuse. And basically, we went to Lake Placid. There is a boxing thing there. We also went to Catskill at the Floyd Patterson. I don't know if it's Catskill, but at the Floyd Patterson Club. I think that might be Poughkeepsie, actually, at the Floyd Patterson Club. And they had like the Junior Olympic thing. I did that when I was 14, but I was in the middle of wrestling. And for some reason, I really wanted to get good at wrestling. And sometimes I wish I had just focused on boxing, because there was a point in time where I really wanted to try and go for the 2016 Olympics in Rio de Janeiro. And that was going to be the goal at one point, but other sports and school got in the way of that. So we focused more on that, because my family said you can always rely off that education compared to athletics. But boxing, I think it's like 37 or 40 wins with only 5 losses. The question was, have I ever lost by KO? No, not in boxing. MMA technically once, although I thought it was a horrible stoppage, and I still think, even though the guy that beat me is one of my best friends on the planet now, I still think it's one of the worst stoppages that's ever happened. But that's just me, But at the end of the day, it's amateurs. I was 20 years old. It's really no big deal. Mixed martial arts, believe it or not, I am 3 wins and 5 losses, and 4 losses. My bad, not 5. Geez, I should give myself some credit. If you look on Tapology, it says I'm ranked way below. But the last 3 people I fought, you had Yuri Panvarov, who's number 1 light heavyweight Northeast. Corey Norman, number 2 light heavyweight Northeast. Billy Brennan, number 4 light heavyweight Northeast. So I'm constantly competing with the best guys in the Northeast, and I did that at heavyweight as well. I won the Northeastern Cage Wars champion. That's normally what we classify that as. We like to say that Cage Wars is probably the best promotion in the Northeast, is what I would like to say. There are a lot of other good places, like a couple of Fight Night promotions and Donnybrook promotions in Vermont, Gladius Fighting Championships I fought for. I'm trying to think if there's Triton fights in New York City or Long Island. They're really good. But I fought for Cage Wars and Gladius so far. I haven't fought on any other shows. And, I fought some really good guys, and I came up short. But I know for a fact that I gave them probably the hardest fight that they had at that moment. Maybe not Yuri, because Yuri tapped me out. I did lose by tap out in that fight, actually. He got me in an arm triangle. And I did not train jiu-jitsu at all. And when you tie up with a purple belt who trains with someone that's from the Marcelo Garcia tree, it just was not going to go my way that night. But I did land a solid shot, and I thought I had him hurt. But that's a different story. Corey Norman's probably one of the most smart people I've met. He's a catch wrestler. He beat me by majority decision. And that's the first fight I actually conceded. I lost that fight. I didn't think at the end. I'm like, I don't think I got the nod. I thought I won the first round, but the last 2 I got blown out. I thought. And then Billy Brennan, I still think I won that fight. I hate to I hate to sound like a poor sport. I'm not, because I don't care. It's amateurs. But I thought I won that fight. Andrew Ney was my first fight. I won by standing guillotine. Second fight was Tim Kronk. I lost by KO. I hope I don't come off like a jerk, but I just really don't think they should have stopped that fight. But all the credit in the world to him. He was a former CFL football player and stuff, and now once again, me and him are really good friends from Canada too. Third fight, Mark Worthington, I won by TKO to win the Cage Wars Championship, amateur championship. Then Drew Torrance, I won by KO. If you look at my Tapology, that's what it says. And that was for the Gladius 205 title, or maybe just a 205 fight. I forget which one. Yeah, so MMA, 3 wins, 4 losses. It sucks. I hate being negative. Jiu-Jitsu, gi Jiu-Jitsu, I don't have a good record. I know that. I have more losses than I do wins, because I don't like gi at all. No gi, I've really only lost about three or four times. Just because my wrestling is better. I started wrestling when I was 14 years old. I don't know what my wrestling record was. I can tell you I have over 100 matches. I've had well over 100 matches. I don't know if I've won 100 matches, but I know I've at least won a good chunk, maybe 40 or 50, 60 of them, from high school alone. I won every single JV match I ever had. I know that. Which was always good, but varsity was harder for me just because my teammates were so good. I had a lot of guys in the mat room that killed me before I'd even get out on the mat. That's why it was very hard to pin me, because I got pinned all the time in the mat room. In college, my first year, I went 4 wins and 17 losses. And then my second year in college, I went 7 wins and 7 losses. My season was not very long. I know that just because I was so proud of myself for even, doing somewhat okay in like a Division III school. I never ever thought I would wrestle in college, let alone, share a mat with the number 1 guy in the country for 4 years straight with James Bethel. I had him on the show. You should watch the podcast with that. I messed up the audio on my end, but you just got to hear him talk. He's so smart. And he's awesome. So my record overall, I've never done kickboxing. I wish I had. In wrestling, I don't know. I definitely lost more than I have. My most successful sport was boxing. I very rarely lost that. And then really the only times I did lose, I thought, was because I was in someone's backyard and I couldn't get the stoppage, because most of my wins were by stoppage. I knew how to get people out of there. Not just by knocking them out or stuff like that, but like I knew how to play the ref. I knew how to play the coaches. I knew how to get you on Queer Street. I knew what to do. I knew how to stop the fight. And that's basically what it was. It was really easy in boxing. MMA is a lot harder. Wrestling's a lot harder for me. I just like punching stuff, so it came down to that. I really want to do a kickboxing bout one of these days. That's definitely the goal right now. But, my record is not all that great, I guess you could say. But I can say one thing. I'm always in a tough spot. I always give people a tough time. I always like to say, if I ever go train with someone, I own a piece of real estate in their head. Whether I hurt them, whether I gave them a tough fight. Like one time, I'll give a story real fast. I hit a guy in boxing and I broke his orbital bone, and then we went to go train with him. Although he won that fight, he outpointed me. I went to go train with him to get him ready for some tournament or something because they asked if I could. And I will never forget, and this was like a year after the fact, he would always keep his glove just right here. And he'd always flinch when I was going after him. And that's what I mean. I always own a piece of real estate in someone's head, even when I train with them. You might have won, but at the end of the day, I walked away with not a mark on me. I might have done some damage to you, or I might have gotten in your head somehow. And that's all I really ever cared about. That way, if I ever have to fight them again, I think all rematches I had in boxing, I won. I knew that. I rematched every guy I lost to, and I remember the rematches. I thrashed those guys. I was so mad. So, but that's a different story. Style. What's my style? Very much like Rocky Marciano is the way I could word it. When it came to boxing, when it came to wrestling, I sucked at wrestling. So all I did was kind of get in like a boxing stance almost and just club people really, really hard. I just pummel a lot. That's the thing. I often look for big throws. I often look for big tie-ups. I often look for something big to get you pinned quickly, if I can. I am not very good when it comes to top control, although I am much better now because of college, and jiu-jitsu and catch wrestling stuff that I've trained a lot over the last 2 years. So my top control is a lot better than what it used to be. But as far as my style in boxing goes, in MMA, I like to say I'm a Bas Rutten style in MMA because Bas Rutten, for one, is an idol of mine, and for two, I try and get people out quickly if I can while taking my time, and my takedown defense is not very good, and I don't really know a whole lot on the mat compared to, and that's basically what I'm trying to do, as like kind of like what Bas Rutten did. I'm trying to get my mat skills up high so I can just not worry about it if I get taken down, because that's all it was. So I'm working a lot more on my grappling. My grappling was always something I struggled with. But as far as my style goes with boxing, it was very much like a Joe Frazier, Rocky Marciano, Mike Tyson style, because I was shorter, I was stockier, I was bigger. And I also had a lot of Bob Foster. Bob Foster is someone that my coach came from. My coach was Bob Foster, who was the light heavyweight champion of the world for about 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And my coach was his chief sparring partner and best friend for like five of those years. So a lot of our style comes from Bob Foster as well at our gym. So I'm like a mix, I guess, if you had to put it. My style would look like a mix of Bob Foster, Rocky Marciano, Joe Frazier, and Mike Tyson, just because I kind of use that same head movement. I crouch very low, and I'm going to beat your arms. If I can't hit your head or your chest or your body, I'm just going to beat your arms, your shoulders, whatever it might be, until you just drop. And that's the idea. In MMA, Bas Rutten, because I try and kick your legs to shit. I also try and kick your body, take the liver out. And And wrestling, that's my own thing. I just kind of pummel a lot like most heavyweights do, but that's a different story. Yeah, so that would be my style, I would say. Next, coaching. Oh, do I like coaching or competing more? I don't know. That's a good question. I love coaching, but there's always that thrill of being there. That's one thing I can say about competing is that although you get that uncontrollable fear at some points, it is a big fear. You're like, oh shit, I'm going out, I'm going to get thrashed, I'm going to this, I'm going to that, and or I'm going to thrash this guy rather, or this is going to be a tough fight, this is going to be this, man, I'm nervous. And then you go in there and then all the nerves go away, and then, at the end of the fight, you're more nervous than anything because you just got in a fist fight. But, I don't really have a solid answer to that. I love them both equally in their own ways. I love coaching people because I love seeing the success in them, but I like having my own successes. And it's been a while since I've had my own successes because I have been coaching a lot more than I have competed. But I think for someone at my age, and that might be kind of, me bragging a bit, I think at someone for my age, I am a better coach than a lot of guys just because I've been around it for so long and that I've been blessed to be around people that have a lot of knowledge, to pass that knowledge on, and then to have a good watch and learn ability, that our generation is so blessed with. I can go sit down, watch a technique, drill it a couple times. I might miss one or two things, and then I'll go to my coach, be like, what about this? And he's like, oh, yeah, that was fine. That was perfect. That was just like this person used to do. He's like, oh, perfect, awesome. So I think I'll put it this way. I think I am a better coach than I am an athlete, but I do like competition a lot more, I do think, because I like being part of something, I'm going to reset this again. And we're back. Okay. Next question. My background. So I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier already, but boxing was my very first sport. I got into it when I was 12, and I started competing when I was 13. My background went in this order: boxing, wrestling, mixed martial arts, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. Basically the way it went. So I started boxing. I competed in that a lot. I got in a fight with someone on the wrestling team, and the options were I was a freshman in high school. I was in 9th grade. I was 14. And the wrestling coach said, well, you beat up one of my guys. Here's the thing. You can either get in trouble with the principal, or you got to come and wrestle on my team as a 220-pounder, which made no sense. I was like 165 or 170. I had to drink 12 pounds or eat 12 pounds to 182 to wrestle 220. So that's kind of why I have eating issues now, why I have weight problems now, because I am one of those people with wrestling. And then, my second or third year, I had to cut a couple pounds to make 195 a couple times, and that sucked. I didn't like cutting weight. I'd prefer to cut weight than to engorge myself, though. That's the thing, because when I engorge myself, I can't stop anymore. So my stomach is just a bottomless pit. I just eat, and I can't stop no matter what. Probably because I developed some type of eating disorder because of wrestling. That I would 100% guarantee that's probably what it was. But anyway, background: boxing, wrestling. I got into like a fun little thing with a wrestling buddy of mine. I lost, I guess you could say. It wasn't really a fight, more or less just like I hit him when I was on the feet with a solid shot, and then he took me down, and I didn't know what to do. And then I knew Matt Hamill trained like a half hour away from where I lived in Ilion, New York, in Utica or New Hartford. So I went out there and trained at Mohawk Valley Mixed Martial Arts, and I actually learned how to wrestle. I learned some jiu-jitsu and stuff, learned some kickboxing. And then I started learning a lot of kickboxing when I started training with my buddy Nick Spencer down in Evolution Grappling Academy. I started going down there and really learning kickboxing, like Muay Thai kickboxing. And then I watched a lot of Bas Rutten before that even. So I watched him, Ernesto Host, Ramon Deckers, Peter Arch, and a couple other people, and it was just something that I really liked. I liked the Dutch style kickboxing. I left there, then I went to Oneonta Jiu-Jitsu Academy during college, and I learned traditional jiu-jitsu my last year. I was a senior in college. I was 21, and the reason why I learned that is because I lost an MMA fight against someone that was very good. I realized that my MMA grappling was really just, I never really got good at submissions. It was more, I just knew how to get out of stuff when people were throwing punches at me. But the moment someone turned it into just a strict grappling contest, I lost for some reason. So I started doing jiu-jitsu. I am a 4-stripe white belt. I think I was about to get my blue, but this COVID-19 thing started and my job got in the way. I think I would have got my blue belt probably in October or November if I wasn't so busy. But then I started going back and training for 2.5 weeks, and the COVID-19 thing, because my job schedule changed. And in COVID-19, this freaking coronavirus stopped me from getting my blue belt. But I think I'm very close to my blue belt. Then I went to a different MMA gym, Utica Combat Athletics, and I really got my traditional styles. I learned some karate kicks and karate techniques and taekwondo stuff, because that's what our coach's striking background was in boxing, and he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu under Scott Schultz. And if you don't know who Scott Schultz is, he grappled Kenny Florian way back in the day, and he's very good out in Syracuse. And then he's also a state champion in wrestling. So we have a very much a catch wrestling oriented jiu-jitsu, a very strong style jiu-jitsu is what I would call it. I wouldn't say catch wrestling, but I would say a very strong style jiu-jitsu is what we use. We rely heavily off of sweeps, leverage, and a lot of other things. And then my former opponent, Corey Norman, I go out and train with him a lot because he has a very interesting background in catch-as-catch-can wrestling. So I learn a lot from him. And then I watch just a lot of YouTube stuff on catch-as-catch-can. So my background, primarily I am a boxer. That is by far my most vast experience and knowledge comes from the sport of the sweet science of boxing. If I had to say what am I best at next, kickboxing. And then if I had to say anything after that, it'd probably be wrestling, I guess you'd say. Greco-Roman wrestling, I like upper body ties. But honestly, grappling, I'm pretty meh. But that's it. I do train in traditional Muay Thai with my buddy Nick whenever I go down to Evolution Grappling Academy. He goes to Thailand every year. And I love talking to him and training from him and learning from him. And he's only a couple years older than me, too. So it's always cool. So that's my background. Why did I start combat sports? I was being bullied. Simple. I was being bullied. I did not have the best control of my anger, and my childhood was not great. And basically, I saw an episode of Everybody Hates Chris, and then I saw an episode of Family Matters. In both episodes, Chris and then Steve Urkel learned how to box so they could fight their bully and stuff. And then they were showing all that stuff, and then I started really watching Bruce Lee things and how to defend yourself and stuff. And I had a punching bag just to get my anger out, and I would just go downstairs, I'd hit it and stuff. And then I asked my dad, we got to look for something to box. I think I was 10 or 11 when I saw those episodes, and basically it took a year until we found this place because there were no boxing gyms around. They were gone. And then a guy called us and said, well, there's this place that's kind of like a word of mouth in Utica. It's he calls it the Den Wonder Athletic Club, and that's where I met my coach at 12. I was 12 years old in April of, so that would be 2010, right? Yes, 2009 or 10. I was 2009. So, yeah, it was cool. It was really fun, and I remember going downstairs, and my coach asked me how many bones are in the human body. I said 206. I somehow knew that from Drake and Josh, I think. And then he said, how many in the human hand? I said, I'm going to take a number away, and said 26. And I think there's 24. I can't really remember, but then he brought me downstairs, and there was a skeleton in the corner. I'm like, there was a ring. There was a makeshift ring, then there was the big ring upstairs, because there was downstairs that had all the heavy bags, and upstairs had the ring and all the skip ropes and stuff. That's where you did all the cardio, and then downstairs was the grunt work. And then he basically said, this is bones. You're going to learn the anatomy of the human body, and you're going to learn how to break the body down. And so he walked me through this whole entire thing, and that was just really, really interesting. I just remember going down and just wow, this is really interesting. I didn't think that there would be this much education involved with boxing. And so that's why when people ask me questions, is I have very scientific answers as far as how things work, because I remember before I could even start punching stuff, I had to read an anatomy packet and then a small anatomy book that my coach gave me as a homework assignment. And he said, you gotta learn that entire book before you can start punching. I'm like, okay. We don't do that as much anymore, but I remember reading that entire book 3 or 4 times to get it down, because you'd show up one day, he's like, did you read it? He's like, you got to read it. And, he'd put your hand wraps on and he'd show you a couple punches. But before you spar, you better know the anatomy. You better read up on bones. You better read what works and where it goes. So that's why I started, because I was getting bullied, and it's crazy how it turned into something 11 years in the making. Let's see. Next one. My favorite coach. Of course, my coach, my boxing coach, Willie. If you type it in on BoxRec, Willie Wilson, William the Flail, it'll say. Even though on his birth certificate, not even joking, on birth certificate it's Willie Wilson. It's crazy. He's my favorite coach out of all of them, and there's no prejudice at all, towards my other coaches. It's just my coach, my boxing coach, is like my father. I've been around him for a long time. He saved me. He saved my life in a lot of ways. So I love him more as a family member, as a father, than I do anyone else. My MMA coach, Mark Giordano, and my wrestling coach, Dwayne Ritter, in college, I'm always extremely close with them. I love them to death. My coach back in Oneonta Jiu-Jitsu Academy, Matt Martindale, I love that guy. I have a lot of people I call coach because I've learned from a lot of people, but if I had to say like my main circle of coaches that I got close to, that I would say I would give the shirt off my back for, because I trust them and I know them that well. My boxing coach, my MMA coach, my wrestling coach in college, and then my jiu-jitsu coach in college. I love all those guys. I would give the shirt off my back because I know they do the same for me. I'm a very, very loyal person when it comes to that stuff. I see how far loyalty will go, and if I see that you're just going to flake out and go, then I'm not going to have any part of you, and it's nothing personal. It's just I just can't deal with fake people and stuff like this, because you got to understand, it's your health on the line. It's your life could be at stake in sports like these. So, but my favorite coach, I know what the question is. What's my favorite coach outside of that? I would have to say Emanuel Stewart is my favorite boxing coach of all time. Either him or Eddie Futch. I love those guys. I like Emanuel Stewart just because he comes from that hard style, nose to the grindstone. You're gonna get hit and stuff. You're gonna get hit. You're gonna hit people, and I love his corner work, especially when Lennox Lewis was fighting Mike Tyson, and Lennox Lewis could have had Mike Tyson out like 2 or 3 rounds before. Is basically what Emanuel Stewart said. And Lennox Lewis had him hurt in like the 9th or 10th round, I think. No, not even that far. It was like the 6th or 7th round. Emanuel Stewart just like, go to him and bang him, and like doing all that. So I love listening to Emanuel Stewart. Eddie Futch I like a lot. My coach worked with Eddie Futch actually back in the day. I wish I had. But it's cool that I can learn some of Eddie Futch's teachings coming from my coach. I got to talk about my coach a little bit more too. Maybe I'll do a podcast with him. But, my coach had been Bob Foster's sparring partner. He was Joe Frazier's sparring partner when he was fighting Jimmy Ellis. He was George Chuvalo's sparring partner, Jose Napoles, Carmen Basilio towards the end of his career, a bunch of these other guys. My coach is only 72. I say only, but, he's 72 years of age, and he's still, like, hitting the bags and stuff, and he still has all this knowledge. He still got it, you know what I mean? But Emanuel Stewart, Eddie Futch, I love those guys in boxing. MMA, I'm a big fan of, obviously, Bas Rutten, Duane Ludwig. I think those two are probably the sharpest striking coaches in the world. Henry Hooft, I like Henry Hooft a lot. And as far as another coach goes, I'd say, I don't know. Trevor Whitman. I love Trevor Whitman a lot. He's really good. I like that guy. But I knew him more from boxing than I did MMA, honestly. But I love him as a coach in MMA, too. Favorite coach in wrestling? I don't necessarily have one. My college wrestling coach, but I guess if you were going to say like as an Olympic coach or something, I really don't know. I know. No, I guess the coach is at Cornell. I like Cornell wrestling a lot. Favorite kickboxing coach? I don't really have one. I guess you could say Duane Ludwig or Ernesto Host, or Bas Rutten, rather. Jiu-Jitsu. You know what? My favorite coach, once again, is Matt Martindale, MMA coach. I like all my coaches. They're all my favorite. Outside of it, I don't really think about other coaches because they're not who I'm working with. It's just like when people ask me, who's your favorite fighter? I'm not working with those guys. I'm more focused on myself and my squad. I got to do this one more time. That's just kind of who I focus on is myself and my team. So when it comes to anybody else, I don't really care. In boxing, Eddie Futch, Emmanuel Stewart. If someone said who could you go work with, it'd be them. So let's see. Favorite martial art. Okay, my favorite martial art is boxing. I love boxing the most. That's a simple one. If I have to give extreme detail, which I probably won't, but I just like that I know more about it. It's easier to pick up because you're focusing on one thing, but you're focusing on it so much that everything else just kind of looks like it's bad compared to that. So sometimes when I'm not as good at wrestling or something like that, I'll be like, why? I'm so good at boxing, but also boxing didn't just come overnight for me. It took years and years and years of honing it, preparing it, and now I can coach it. Favorite fighter. I always say I idolize people. My favorite fighter is myself. My favorite athlete is myself, but I do idolize people. I do look up to people as role models. If I had to say my favorite boxer, or who I idolize most in boxing, is Rocky Marciano. I love that guy. Mike Tyson's up there. Bob Foster's up there. But Rocky Marciano for sure. In modern days, I like Wilder a lot. I like Deontay Wilder and Terrence Crawford. I'm a big Floyd Mayweather Jr. fan. I like him. Julio Cesar Chavez. But number one, Rocky Marciano. MMA, hands down, Bas Rutten. No one will ever replace him in that category. DC is probably my number two. Kickboxing, Ernesto Host. I like him a lot. Jiu-jitsu, to be Josh Barnett, I guess I could say, but he's, I'd say he's more submission grappling. I'd say Josh Barnett because he's one of the last catch wrestlers out there. Wrestlers, who's my favorite? I do like Kyle Dake a lot. But, either Kyle Dake or Adam Kuhn. I like Adam Kuhn a lot. I don't know why I like Adam Kuhn. Gable Stevenson's really cool, too. But, I'd say Kyle Dake probably is one of my favorite guys to watch. Yeah, so those are my favorite guys. What was the other one? Well, we're nearing the end of the list anyway. My experience, I've talked about that extensively in this, my whole background. Yes, that's what I've said. My record, let's go through my record, all that other stuff. My favorite fights, right. My favorite boxing match is probably Rocky Marciano versus Jersey Joe Walcott. If not, Bob Foster versus Chris Finnegan. I love watching those. I can watch those all the time. Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson. Although Mike Tyson lost, I love that fight. I don't know what it is. I think it was just Emmanuel Stewart, honestly. I love that fight a lot. MMA, Dominic Cruz and TJ Dillashaw will always have a special place in my heart because I remember after that fight, I got up in the middle of the night and ran up and down my street, sprinted just to get a cardio workout. I'm like, man, I want to go fight. I think maybe I was 18 at the time, but I loved that fight. I love Rumble Johnson and Daniel Cormier, UFC 210. I love that whole show because we were there in person in Buffalo because it was a nice 3.5-hour trip and I loved being there. That was one of the better nights of fights I've ever been at. But Daniel Cormier and Rumble Johnson, both of those fights I loved a lot. Daniel Cormier, Alexander Gustafsson, I like more than Jones Gustafsson, to be honest. I like Cormier Gustafsson way better. I also like Jose Aldo versus Chad Mendes 2 was a phenomenal fight. Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje was great. But my favorite, Dominic Cruz and TJ Dillashaw for sure. I love Dominic Cruz. He's probably my favorite. If it goes Bas Rutten, Dominic Cruz, Daniel Cormier for me as far as my favorite guys to watch. And then, let's see. My favorite wrestling match? Probably Sadulayev and Kyle Snyder 1. I like that one a lot. I'd say Sadulayev is one of my favorite guys to watch. I love him as a wrestler. I know we're from the U.S. and he's Russia and rival, but I think Sadulayev is probably the best wrestler alive right now. And he's my age, which is the crazy part. I think he might be a year younger than me, which sucks. I'm 22, he's like 21, and he's just accomplished like everything on the planet. Jiu-jitsu-wise, my favorite match. I don't really have one, I guess. I would say Josh Barnett and Gordon Ryan, maybe, just because I was so surprised Gordon Ryan just destroyed Josh Barnett like that. Favorite match in kickboxing. Oh, for sure. Rico Verhoeven and Badr Hari, both fights. They're both amazing. I love both of those fights. For sure, those fights were awesome. By far my favorite kickboxing bouts. As far as Muay Thai fights, I don't know. There's like 1,012,000 of those things. I have no idea. But yeah, those are my favorite fights in all combat sports. Cool. So let's see another one. Sorry, I have to read down the list again. Who do you think is the hardest puncher you've ever seen, and who's the hardest puncher you've ever personally met? I've met Deontay Wilder. I think the hardest I've ever been hit, although everyone say, well, if you lost by TKO that one time, it would probably be him, would be Tim Kronk. But the hardest hitting guy I've met, which was freakish because he's only like 160 pounds, is this man by the name of Eric Money Mendiola. No one has ever hit me so hard in my entire life, and in such fast, rapid combinations too. If he touches anybody in his weight class, he has put them out, and he's scary, right? When he hits me, it's like, oh my God. But Ernie Shavers, to me, is the hardest puncher of all time, and that's the one thing even George Foreman and even a couple other guys say. They say Deontay Wilder has freakish power, but apparently, from what my coach was telling me, way back when, Ernie Shavers was on the undercard of one of my coach's fights in I believe, Cincinnati, Ohio. My coach was fighting the main event, I believe, for regional light heavyweight championship. And Ernie Shavers walked in, and then the pro guy said, "Wait, that's who Ernie Shavers is?" And my coach was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, hell no," and he left. And coach had never seen that once in his entire life. He's never seen someone just up and leave after seeing their opponent. He's just like, "I've seen that guy hit the bag," because apparently the day before he was warming up at a gym or something. Ernie Shavers, about 6 or 7 punches in, cracked a whole canvas bag in half, and everything just fell out within 3 or 4 punches. He actually split the seams in the middle of the bag. And then apparently he punched a couple other bags in there and did a couple things. He popped 2 speed bags and a couple other things. So Ernie Shavers, to me, apparently was just a walking dynamite stick. So I would say Ernie Shavers is the hardest puncher of all time. Just from hearing from personal experience, Ernie Shavers was the hardest puncher of all time. Then I'd have to say in order, probably Ernie Shavers. I'd probably say Wilder, George Foreman, Oscar Bonavino hit really hard. As far as heavyweights go, if you want to say pound for pound, I'd say Tommy Hearns hit really hard. Marvin Hagler hit pretty good. Julian the Hawk Jackson, Gerald McClellan, Nigel Benn, those 3 beasts hit really hard, but definitely for sure Julian Jackson, probably the hardest puncher pound for pound. I know Ernie Shavers, pound for pound. Ernie Shavers, there's no way. Although Ernie Shavers missed a lot, but if he hit you, you were just taking a walk down memory lane. But the hardest I've ever been personally hit was by Eric Money Mendiola. No one, I don't think, will ever take that, because he's the only person that's ever made me see quite literal stars. I've been hit before, and I've touched the canvas, kind of like from going off balance. But when Money hit me flush once, I remember I was like 17 years old, and we were doing a hard sparring session to get him ready for his fight, and he hit me with a ducking left hook, and that my vision went for a second. I just saw purple. It was like boop, and it was like, what the hell was that? And then he did it again, and it was a boop. It was like, what the hell was that? And I was just sitting there, and I had to just put my hands up. I just remember, oh my God. And we were going hard for some reason that day, and I just remember I didn't get a single shot off because I couldn't hit him, for one, and for two, every time he hit me, it was like, what the shit? This sucks. So for sure, Eric Money Mendiola is probably the hardest hitter. If we have to talk about strength, The strongest person I have ever tied up with in my entire life was my wrestling captain in college, James the Brown Bear Bethel. That man has a grip that is unlike no other. I'd say Corey Norman is up there as well, but my top number one is James Bethel, because you grip him and you're like, you're just not getting away with that. Jake Grossbeck was a teammate of mine in college. He was incredibly strong. Corey Norman, once again, he's up there as far as his strength. You can't really move him. He's like you're trying to move a brick wall, whereas Bethel's like you're trying to move a Sherman tank that can shoot just as well as he can, not be maneuvered. The most stubborn person to move was Jake Grossbeck. You tie up with him and you can't move that man. It's just like trying to move. Like if I try to pick up this building and move it to the left, that's what it's like to wrestle Jake Grossbeck. Jake Morris as well was another guy I wrestled in college from Brockport, and I just remember like tying up with him. I normally have a harder head than someone, but I remember headbutting him, and it hurt me. That never happens. I'm like, that didn't feel good, you know. It didn't like hurt, but it was just like I'm not winning the headbutt battle, and that never happened. But yeah, he was for sure stronger than I was, and I like to consider myself incredibly strong. And there's not many people I tie up with that I think have better natural strength than I do, but those guys I've tied up with, I'm like, wow, you know, you're like, there's just something hard work can do after a while, I guess. One more time, I think. I hope that's the last time. My lights are probably dying. But yeah, the strongest person with that. Oh, and it says here, who's the best person or the most experienced person you've ever worked with? As far as training goes, like if I could say sparring with somebody, I have sparred with Clay Guida once and Charlie Brenneman once. And I forget what it was, but it was something with Clay Guida and it was something with Brenneman at my old gym. I think it was Clay Guida anyway. I'm pretty sure it was Clay Guida. It wasn't at my old gym. I know I sparred him at a different one. He had like some thing in New York and we were down there for something. I have worked with Jeff and Roger Mayweather. They came up to a thing up in the Turning Stone Resort Casino, which is about 20 minutes away from us in Vernon, New York. And Coach knew them because Floyd Sr. boxed on a couple undercards of my coach years and years ago. That's so weird to say. And basically what wound up happening was I got to work with Jeff for like 2 days because he was in one place. He came to our gym, worked with us. He was really cool. Floyd wasn't there at the time. And then Roger worked with me just for like a half hour in the back of this show. And he just, it wasn't like we put mitts on or anything, but it was just like, you know, doing this and stuff with our hands. And people that say that his technique and his style is bad and that he's doing more work, you're so sadly mistaken. That style, rest in peace to Roger Mayweather. I was so blessed to actually learn from that man. I can't describe to people the amount of information that went through his head. When it came to someone that had your hands moving and the fact that you weren't getting hit, I don't think there was a better coach than Roger Mayweather out there. I really don't. Defensively and offensively, I think he was a complete genius. Yeah, so Roger Mayweather for sure was up there. Experience as far as I worked with. Grappling-wise, John Danaher and Ben Askren. I did a seminar with them. They were really cool. I got to work with them. They're nicest people on the planet. And then it was Boss Root and Dwayne Ludwig as far as kickboxing went. I went to, that literally made my whole life. I was sitting down. I had driven like 3.5 hours. Like 3 hours to get to Poughkeepsie from Ilion. Got on a train. Took about an hour and 20 minutes to get into the city from Poughkeepsie on the train because you have to make 80 different stops. So we did that. And then I remember getting to the gym where they were at Queens College, and I took a nap for like 10 minutes because the seminar was like 3 hours away. I got there way too soon. I get a tap on my shoulder. And it's Boss Rutan, and he's talking to me. He's just like, it's like, I hope I'm not boring you already, and stuff like that. I'm like, whoa, it's like my idol's talking to me, and he woke me up. And he said, why don't you come hang out with Dwayne and I in our changing room for the next hour or so? And I did. There was him, Shane Faison with Fight Tips, and Dwayne Ludwig were just in the back, and they just bullshit with me for like an hour. And I didn't really even ask all that many questions. They asked me more questions than I asked them. And because they're like my biggest idols in the world. And no offense to Shane Faison, I think he's cool. I love his YouTube channel. He's a big inspiration for my YouTube channel. But screw him compared to those two. You know what I mean? It's just like, man, these two are like my biggest idols. And I just remember looking at Bas Rutten, and I'm like, I just can't describe to you how much of a pleasure this actually is. And he's like, oh, cool. And then he signed a glove, which is over there. I won't take it out because I don't want to move the vinyl. But then he signed a glove for me. He had a broken hand. If you watch the Joe Rogan Experience, it was actually a week after that seminar I did. He punched a table, broke his hand, and he said, take a picture of this, and he signed the glove with his broken hand. He said, no one will believe you, that's why, but it's Bas Rutten, so everyone better freaking believe it. As far as people I've met, the coolest story is when we were in Buffalo, New York, and we were not supposed to be in this bar, I don't think, because we walk in and these people are like, yeah, you know, your food's free. And we're like, huh, that's weird. And we're at this bar. Stephen Thompson's in there, Chris Weidman's in there, Gegard Mousasi's over there, Kamaru Usman's right there, and DC, Rashad Evans, Ariel Helwani, Dana White, all these dudes. And then they said, just want to let you know your food's all paid for, there's this, the UFC's taking care of you. And we had a wristband on because we were right, yeah, that's one of my lights just died. We had a wristband on because because we got to the very front row of the open weigh-ins, right? and the open workouts the night before. So we go in and we're like, oh, and so we wound up, we could have been jerks and just said, yeah, we're not going to pay for the food or something, but we wound up leaving like a tip of like $70 because that's what we owed. We weren't going to take the money like that. And then we just remember people were like asking me, it's like, because I had cauliflower ear and the UFC 210 stuff on, and they were asking me, Rumble Johnson was up on the second floor, and they were asking me, oh, you know, where do you train out of? I'm like, Utica. It's like, oh, I didn't see you on the card. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a last minute replacement. You know, so I was lying through my teeth. I couldn't believe where we were because my friend Jeff's just like, Al, that is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson behind us. I'm like, and we turn around and it's all these guys, and we couldn't believe it. And it was crazy because Dana White and the mayor of Buffalo were giving like a speech about having the UFC in Buffalo for the first time in years, and basically it was Stephen Thompson taps me on the shoulder and he says, hey, do you mind moving out of the way so I can see a little bit better, buddy? You're just a little bit too tall. Because it says he's 6 foot on the what's it called, on the Titantron or whatever, on the tail of the tape. But honestly, he's a lot smaller than what he looks. I'm like, yes, sir. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, please don't kick my ass. You know what I mean? So we turned. So I'm like, yes, sir. And I just moved to the left. I said, hey, do you mind if we get a picture? He's like, yeah, man. And he sat down and talked to us for like 5 minutes. Like, oh, so you guys fight? He's like, no, we just were able to get in because of our wristbands. And we didn't lie to him, but we lied to Kamaru Usman and then what's his name, and some dude that was on the undercard. I think maybe Gregor Gillespie fought on that card. That might have been who. But yeah, that was one of the coolest experiences of my entire life. I will never forget that. That was by far one of the best weekends of my life. Is that all the questions? I know there was one I took a screenshot of or something. That might have been all the questions. Yeah, I think that was all the questions, guys. Wow. That's cool. That was my first Q&A. I've never done a Q&A. I've done interviews before, but I've never really done like a Q&A. Those are all the questions you guys commented or messaged me or whatever it might be. And I hope that this was somewhat helpful as far as some of the questions that people had. If not, then I suck. I'm sorry. But I just wanted to release that. A new Quarantine Combat will be coming out soon. Hopefully you guys aren't completely losing your mind like I have been in the wake of this horrible virus. I'm praying for all of your safety, whether you're religious or not. I am praying for all your safety. I'm hoping and wishing well for all of you. I love you all for supporting me and stuff. It's just so cool to think that I'm at like 625 subscribers. And some people will be like, that's not a lot. But it is to me. That's a lot more than some people might get. And it's something I appreciate greatly. So, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for watching the Combat Chat. I don't know what number this is, but I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great day.